Tonight on Reporting Scotland, allegations of decades of physical cruelty and sexual abuse at a children's home in Argyll.
He'd had you down, she'd belt you, or she'd had you down, he'd belt you.
The Christian charity that ran the home apologises. Also coming up in the programme. NHS boards across the country reveal concern, confusion and uncertainty over Brexit plans. A parting shot. The country's most decorated female athlete at the Commonwealth Games announces her retirement. The scientists investigating the secrets of Scotland's tsunamis, an event more frequent than previously thought. And the emergency workers cycling from Lockerbie to Syracuse University to mark the 30th anniversary of the atrocity. Good evening. Allegations of decades of physical cruelty and child sex abuse at a children's home in Argyll have been uncovered by a BBC investigation. The claims centre on Lagarry Children's Home, which was run by the Christian charity the Sailors Society. The society says it apologises to the children abused in its care. Mark Daly from BBC Disclosure has this.
Lagarry Children's Home in Rue, Argyll, was run by the Christian charity the Sailors Society and was supposed to be a safe haven for the children of seafarers. But a BBC Disclosure investigation has revealed claims of decades of physical cruelty and child sex abuse. Roddy Austin was there.
Unless you've lived it, you can't try to fathom what went on in that place. She was immaculate and she was evil.
She was matron Anne Miller, who ran the home until 1970.
The matron used to pick me up by my ears, throw me in a cold bath, soap on her fingers, put my head back and put her fingers down my throat.
Anne Miller died with her reputation intact, but she was replaced by this couple, the Reverend William and Mary Barry, in 1972. Former resident Ewan MacDonald said that they were cruel and abusive.
There was a Christian system you had to live by. You wet the bed, you get the bed sheets rubbed in your face, or Mr. Barry would had you down, she'd belt you, or she'd had you down, he'd belt you.
Survival at Lagarry came at a cost. Former residents Angela Montgomery and her two sisters Mary and Norma said that over the years they were sexually abused by Mr. Barry and his Sailor Society associates hundreds of times.
And after a while, even as unpleasant as it was, not that you get used to it, you just thought there was no point struggling or fighting. There's a level of acceptance that it became part and parcel of life at Lagarry.
The home closed in 1982 and William Barry died just over a decade later. 2 police investigations have failed to result in charges being brought against anyone. Mary Barry died just last year. The Sailor Society said it was committed to working with survivors of abuse.
I was horrified when I heard these accounts. We do regret that any abuse happened, and we have apologised unreservedly that this abuse happened.
Just a few days ago, the Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry announced that it would investigate Lagarry. And for the children who grew up there, they are still learning to live with the past. Mark Daly, Reporting Scotland.
And you can see the full Disclosure programme, Suffer the Children, tonight at 10:40 on BBC One Scotland. NHS boards across Scotland have revealed widespread concern, uncertainty and some confusion after the BBC asked them about their Brexit plans. One board, NHS Lanarkshire, has warned there's a very high risk that leaving the EU could disrupt its services. It's working with the Scottish Government to avert potential problems. Here's our political correspondent, Glenn Campbell.
A Brexit health check for the NHS. As the UK's departure from the EU draws nearer, is our health service ready? BBC Scotland asked health boards across the country for details of their Brexit preparations and any impact assessments. And here's what came back. The third largest board is worried it will not be in full operational readiness for EU withdrawal and that there could be disruption to the services it provides for 1 in 10 Scottish patients. Lanarkshire Health Board raised the risk level for Brexit-related disruption from high to very high as talk of a no-deal Brexit has intensified over the summer. And whilst this health board has expressed its Brexit concerns more starkly than any other, those concerns are shared across the NHS.
I think the approach they've taken is probably going to be criticised potentially as alarmist, but I actually think that it's cautious and it's sensible. They are planning for potentially worst case scenario, you might say. I think that's the right and proper thing to do.
So to prepare for the worst and hope for better?
I think that's a very good way of putting it.
The health service relies on many EU nurses and doctors like Gabriela Lindhoff from Germany. She wants to stay after Brexit, but can't be sure what others will do.
I think for the people who are already here long term, it's just they will go through the kind of bureaucracy that's needed. But I cannot see a huge attraction for newcomers from Europe moving over to Scotland.
Other key issues for the NHS include availability of nuclear material for cancer diagnosis and treatment, availability of specialist medicines and technology, and arranging treatment in EU countries for UK patients and vice versa. Without knowing what Brexit deal, if any, will end up with, the NHS is having to plan for a range of possibilities.
Mapping out the options and therefore working out a plan associated with each option so that they're then ready when whatever option it's going to be arises. That would seem to be the natural and normal thing to do.
Some NHS boards have put in detailed work on leaving the EU. Others are just beginning to think how it might affect their service. All need to know what the Brexit deal is before they can fully prepare.
And Glenn joins me. So a mixed picture across the country.
I think that's fair. We've had a 10-page report on Brexit from NHS Lothian, but across the M8, NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde say their assessments are in progress. Mid-August, NHS Western Isles said that it was now starting work on Brexit, by which time NHS National Services Scotland was already committed to continuous planning. So different boards at different stages in their preparations, and some confusion too. We had boards like NHS Lothian and NHS Borders saying that there was a clear understanding that they would lead on Brexit preparations, whereas NHS Forth Valley said work was being coordinated nationally by the Scottish Government. Certainly the Scottish Government is taking an overview, but the Health Secretary Jean Freeman told us it was difficult to plan fully, that there were limits to what they could do without having the detailed information from the UK Government about what kind of Brexit we're going to have. The UK, of course, says it's committed to negotiating a deal with the EU. Hopefully that will be concluded in the autumn. At the same time, they're also preparing for a potentially more disruptive no-deal scenario as well, and they say that the devolved governments, including the Scottish Government, are involved in those discussions.
And you've been looking at the impact of Brexit across lots of areas of Scottish life, so what's next?
Well, with 6 months to go, we asked 80 public bodies across Scotland for their impact assessments and for details of their Brexit preparations. The second part is tomorrow, where we'll focus on local government and a patchwork of preparation across Scotland there, and also on the impact that Brexit could have on the workforce.
Glenn, thank you. A man has been seriously injured in a knife attack as he and his girlfriend walked home from a night out in Shotts in North Lanarkshire. The couple, both aged 19, were walking near Shottskirk Road at 3:15 yesterday morning when a small silver car pulled up alongside them. An assailant got out and attacked the man before spraying the woman with an unknown substance. Police say they have yet to establish a motive, but are treating the incident as attempted murder. Detectives investigating a robbery in which a 76-year-old woman was threatened with a knife have released CCTV footage of a man they're keen to speak to. The robbery happened at the woman's home in Crossford in Fife on Friday, the 4th of May. The victim was held inside the property and a number of items were stolen. Detectives said the man, seen in a petrol station believed to be in Rosyth, may have information to assist their investigation. A deal is expected to be signed this evening between France and Britain over scallop fishing rights in the English Channel. Crews clashed last month over laws that allow British boats to gather scallops year-round, but place restrictions on French vessels. The new agreement means larger vessels will stay out of the Baie de Seine until the 1st of November. Scotland's most decorated female athlete in Commonwealth Games history has announced her retirement. Jen McIntosh won 2 gold, a silver and 2 bronze medals in shooting across 3 Commonwealth Games. However, today, the 27-year-old announced she no longer wants to continue, saying it's time to put the important people in her life before sport. Rhona McLeod has this exclusive report.
It's a day Jen McIntosh says she can't believe has finally come. The 2-time Olympian and record-breaking Scot at the Commonwealth Games has announced her retirement at the age of 27.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, the sport is a difficult life to live. It's very challenging and it takes a lot out of you, and there's only so long that you can kind of put up with that, I guess. You know, I've prioritised sport over most of the things in my life for a long time, and it's time to put other things and other people first.
McIntosh first came to prominence as a teenager in the Delhi Commonwealth Games, winning 2 gold and a bronze medal. More medals came in Glasgow with gold and silver.
Multiple medalist across Commonwealth, European and World Championships. She's been a great ambassador and role model for young people, and particularly for women's sport, so she leaves a great legacy for the sport. You know, whilst it's a very sad day for Jen, obviously we're delighted with her achievements and wish her very much luck for the future.
There were no medals for Jen at the Gold Coast Games earlier this year, but younger sister Shona won a bronze medal and more recently won the World Championships just 12 days ago.
I'm very, very proud of her, and, you know, pleased as punch for her, to be honest. You know, it was an incredible achievement, unprecedented actually. But yeah, it does create challenges, and it puts into perspective my achievements and where I'm at as well, which, you know, it all just kind of reinforced what I was already thinking and feeling, that perhaps it was time to walk away.
But McIntosh leaves behind an impressive career, having medalled at World, European and Commonwealth level.
For me, when it comes to, you know, when I think back about this career in 20 years' time, it's going to be, you know, the people I met, the friends I've made, the memories I've made with them. Over 10 years, the time I've spent travelling the world with my dad and laterally with my sister. Met my husband through the sport. You know, those are the things that I take away from it more than anything.
Jen McIntosh talking to Rhona McLeod. Devastating tsunamis have hit Scotland much more often than previously thought, according to new research. Scientists already knew of one huge wave more than 8,000 years ago. Well, now 2 more have been discovered that struck Shetland more recently. This from our science correspondent, Kenneth MacDonald.
It couldn't happen here. It already has. An underwater landslide off Norway caused a tsunami more than 60 feet high. It devastated many parts of the British Isles. That was 8,000 years ago, and researchers had thought it was an extremely rare event. But now samples from Shetland have revealed 2 more tsunamis, one 5,000 years ago and another that's much more recent.
1,500 years ago is very, very recent. It's 500 AD, if you want to think about it like that. But it means that the hazard, the risk, is far more serious than we thought previously.
So how were they able to tell about the 2 more recent tsunamis? They brought samples from Shetland to this laboratory in Dundee. The huge layer of sand dumped by the 40-foot wave left a telltale trace. Now, by taking thousands of X-rays of hundreds of samples, they can look at the evidence in 3D.
By analysing our material with this new scanner, we'll be able to look in much more detail about the nature of even an individual grain. So we'll be able to see really clearly what direction the sediments were laid down in, what the composition of the deposit is, whether there might be evidence for more than one wave inundating the site.
because until we know what caused these tsunamis, researchers can't predict how much more often they might happen in future.
We have 2 locations where we have tsunamis of 13 metres, and that suggests that the landslide must be quite significant.
We often talk about a 1 in 10,000 year occurrence or a 1 in 100,000 year event, but with this, the big event, Storegga at 8,000, and then something at 5, and now something at 1,500, they're much more frequent than previously we've thought, certainly in the Northern Isles.
This is detective work that could take decades. Only then will we be able to work out what, if anything, we can do about the tsunami threat. Kenneth MacDonald, reporting Scotland.
It's 16 minutes to 7. A reminder now of tonight's top story. A Christian charity apologises to children who claimed they were abused in its care in a home in Argyll over decades. And still to come, the emergency workers cycling from Lockerbie to Syracuse University to mark the 30th anniversary of the atrocity. One of Scotland's busiest lifeboat cruises warning people they need to be better prepared to tackle the most dangerous section of the Fife Coastal Path. The RNLI says the increased popularity of the walk near Ely has meant more emergency call-outs. It insists most of the accidents are preventable. Stephen Godden reports.
The coastal path stretches for more than 100 miles round the edge of Fife, and this is the most challenging section. The chain walk in the East Neuk isn't so much a leisurely stroll as it is a scramble across the rocks. And those who know it best over the years have seen the dangers. So carefully, one foot after the other, down the chain. And at the bottom, Davy Kirstoffer, you're the community safety officer here. We've seen the challenge here. Do you think some people just don't appreciate what they're getting into?
Well, it's a great walk this along here, but yes, it is a pretty difficult scramble when you see people coming down there. If they approach this without the appropriate footwear on, though, or if the rocks are slippy, you can imagine that a young child could, scrambling up that, can easily slip and fall all the way down to the bottom here and with serious injuries.
So dangerous?
It's a very dangerous bit.
People are often caught out by the tide in what is the busiest stretch of coastline for the nearby Anstruther lifeboat. In this rescue, to be featured in a BBC documentary, the crew help a woman who slipped on the chain and broken her arm in 3 places. A fairly typical call-out.
We've had some particularly serious injuries here where people have fallen. We've had head injuries, we've had broken bones, and at that point people aren't able to help themselves. It's very difficult for the land-based paramedics to get here, so we help the medical teams get here, and we actually normally here first to do the initial first aid.
Lifeboat crews are called here 7 or 8 times a year. Most of those accidents, they say, are preventable. They're urging people to take better precautions, check the tides and wear appropriate footwear to reduce the risk and ultimately enjoy one of Scotland's most challenging coastal walks. Stephen Godden, reporting Scotland in the East Neuk of Fife.
And Stephen got home safely. An injunction to halt the deportation of a former UBS trader to Ghana has been granted. Kweke Adebole, who was convicted of a £1.4 billion fraud in 2012, lived in Livingston in West Lothian prior to his detention. Mr Adebole had been due to be deported tomorrow. The judge has requested a stay on his deportation to Ghana until the outcome of a judicial review. It's anticipated Mr Adebole will be allowed home to Livingston in the next 5 to 10 days. The full review process is likely to take several months. A survey has suggested only a third of Scots believe university remains the best option for career prospects. YouGov research for the Bank of Scotland also suggested a rise in the number of people who think on-the-job training or an apprenticeship offers a better start to a working life. As we approach the 30th anniversary of the Lockerbie bombing, a group of emergency workers who were among some of the first people on the scene are preparing for a commemorative cycle to Syracuse University in the United States. 35 Syracuse students were among the 270 people killed in the atrocity. Lucy White reports.
The 21st of December 1988.
Pan Am Flight 103 explodes over the skies of Lockerbie. 259 people on board the plane, and 11 of those on the ground are killed.
Today, its remains lie in bits.
The impact of that night's events felt by so many. Colin Dorrans was the youngest policeman working in Lockerbie that night. He thinks many people who were there have been reluctant to talk about the lasting traumatic effect it's had on their lives. But that's starting to change.
There does appear to be quite a large number of people who have suppressed it for many years, not wanting to talk about it out of respect in some cases, or maybe an embarrassment. It depends, but the thing that seems to me to be happening is that the town is more prepared to talk about it now.
Colin, along with a group of men, most of whom were emergency service workers on the night of the bombing, are now preparing to cycle from the town to Syracuse University in New York. 35 of its students were among those killed.
We slept here the night of Lockerbie.
The men want to highlight the need to deal with the lasting mental aftermath of witnessing an atrocity such as Lockerbie.
In these days, big boys didn't talk about it. Big boys didn't cry, they say. And, when I arrived at Lockerbie, I was asked, what do you need by our control? And I immediately asked for psychiatric help. I don't know why, but I did, because what I saw was out of the realms of anything I'd seen.
The team will start off with a cycle from Lockerbie to Edinburgh Castle. They then fly from Edinburgh to Washington DC before setting off on a 7-day, 600-mile cycle to Syracuse for a service to mark the 30th anniversary of the atrocity. For the men, it's both a team effort and a personal journey. They're hoping others will follow.
We all bring our own accounts of what happened that night. It's okay to talk about it. It's good and healthy to seek out structured counselling in the aftermath and just deal with that emotion.
Lucy White, reporting Scotland.
Well, some more cycling now, and a citywide bike hire scheme has been started in Edinburgh. 200 bicycles are now available across the city, and they can be picked up and dropped off at various docking stations. At a cost of £1.50 an hour, the council is hoping it'll encourage more people to take to two wheels. The bikes can be booked on an app, which is now up and running.
With so many tenements, people are sometimes reluctant to buy their own bikes because they've got no storage facilities, etc. So this is aimed at providing a sensible alternative that people can use. We've put them really strategically across the city, so they're where people live, they're where people work, and people will be able to, I think, hop on in the morning and take the bike to work.
Sport now. Hearts manager Craig Levein says he's not getting too excited by the club's winning start to this season. The Tynecastle club is sitting at the top of the Scottish Premiership, having won all its league matches so far. But can it achieve something that hasn't been done in 33 years? Jane Lewis can tell us more.
And Stephen Naismith will score.
On their way to another league win, and for Hearts players and their supporters, these are good times. The Scottish Premiership table makes good reading. Top place and 5 league wins out of 5. Supporters are lapping up the impressive start, but can their team realistically challenge for the league title?
Somebody like Hearts to win it, it's going to take probably several teams to have a good season, and this could be, there's a strong Hibs team just now, a strong Aberdeen, possibly even a strong Rangers. Hearts could maybe sneak in the outside to win it.
Stephen Gerrard seems to have a good momentum there. Celtic, if look at their record over the last couple of years, they've been outstanding. But no, we have to believe we can do something.
Aberdeen are the champions.
That was 33 years ago. Aberdeen, the last side, out with the old firm to win the league. It's early days this season, and while some are sitting up and taking note of Hearts' start, others aren't getting carried away.
The team's in its kind of embryonic stages because obviously we've thrown a lot of players together. And we need them to feed off each other quickly and gain confidence from each other quickly. And if we can do that, then we can keep improving. And I think keeping improving is the answer to how we can keep going and keep winning.
Can they maintain it? The back end of the first round of fixtures, we've got Hibs, Aberdeen and Rangers, and then the first game of the next set of fixtures is Celtic. So that wee run of games, I think will give us a better idea as to where Hearts are placed and how they're going to do.
But right now, as their song goes, Glorious Hearts are the talk of the tune, giving their fans plenty to cheer about. Jane Lewis, reporting Scotland.
Let's see what the weather's going to give us from Christopher.
Jackie, thank you. Hello there, good evening to you. Well, it was a fairly cloudy day for many of us, wet at times, windy at times, and the week ahead looks really quite unsettled. Low pressure systems dominating, the rain heavy, the winds high. And come Wednesday, really quite disruptive at times. Storm force winds are likely. By the end of the week, something a little bit calmer and indeed a little bit cooler. So, as we go through the next few hours, still some outbreaks of rain moving their way northwards. Quite windy as well through central and southern Scotland. The winds ease down, the rain returns in the west. In the east, it's largely dry. For all, a mild night. Temperatures for some in the mid-teens. So to start the day tomorrow, it's a fairly cloudy and wet start with rain moving its way east-northeast across the country. But it should improve, it should dry up for most of us, certainly by afternoon, with that clouds thinning and breaking through parts of the central belt and the south. So some afternoon sunshine coming through at times. And with temperatures up to 17, 18, 19 degrees, that's going to feel quite pleasant. Still quite breezy. In fact, the winds will be strengthening through the end of the afternoon and into the evening. Further north in towards parts of Tayside, over towards parts of southern Aberdeenshire through Highland Perthshire, Inverness-shire. Still cloudy at this point. Outbreaks of rain through parts of Caithness and Sutherland, Lewis and Harris, and indeed the Northern Isles, and the rain taking a time to clear here, and then a further rash of showers to end the day, moving their way northeastwards. And then Wednesday, deep area of low pressure. The rain will be heavy, the winds will be strong, very strong, and in fact we have severe gales forecast. A Met Office yellow be aware warning in force. Disruption is possible on the travel front, perhaps some interruption to power supply and flying debris too. So a real soggy day to come on Wednesday, and a wild one in terms of the wind strength right across the country. So not particularly pleasant, I have to say. You're likely to see some disruption as a result of that weather. And, well, temperature-wise, fairly academic, around about the mid-teens, but it's the rain and the wind that will cause you grief. Rest of the afternoon into the evening, the rain clears away, the winds slowly ease down. And then for the end of the week, something a little bit calmer, a little bit quieter. Still some rain around, and it will be a cooler feeling couple of days. Perhaps, though, by Friday, some sunshine. That's the forecast for now.
Thank you, Christopher. And now a reminder of the main news. The Prime Minister has said MPs will have a choice between her proposed deal with the EU or no deal at all. The comments have prompted her critics to say she's risking a car crash if she sticks to her policy. And a BBC investigation has uncovered allegations of decades of physical cruelty and child sex abuse allegations at a children's home in Argyll. The Christian charity which ran the home has apologised. And that's Reporting Scotland. I'm back with the late bulletin. Join me for that if you can at 10:30. Until then, from all of us, good evening.